All right, and we're live with Dev Wallets, kicking off track two today, or Filecoin Minute Liftoff. And first off, we have Kabuksu from the Lotus team talking to us about Lotus, the wallet in Lotus, and how to use it with Ledger. All right, take it away, Kuba.
Hi, hello everyone. So the presentation will be as a demo. So if demo gods allow us, it will all go smoothly. So first thing off, we have quite a recent new feature in Lotus called Lotus Lite, where you can connect your Lotus daemon to another daemon, and it allows you to use most functions of Lotus, especially functions connected with wallets and multisig, without having to locally sync the daemon. So in this case, I have Lotus synced on the server, and I'm gonna to SSH into it and forward the port to my local machine. So let's do that. Then we can ask Lotus for, you would use Lotus of API info the same way you would use it for the miner. So I would set up a API info over here, and then we can run the Lotus daemon Lite. What this allows us to do is now this daemon, my local daemon, talks to the remote daemon over SSH, or it might be on local network, and it allows us to locally do most things connected with wallets. So we can look at the list of our wallets. You can see I have one wallet address, and for example, I can create a new BLS wallet because that's a SecP address. I pre-created it because it's easier not to wait for the first send. So I will create a new wallet, new BLS wallet. So this is my new BLS address. As you can see, I have two wallets now, two addresses now. So I can do simple send from my default address because it's marked as default to this address, and let's send some nanofills to it. So now we got the transaction CID. That's awesome because I didn't have to sync the node, and after some time it will show up on wallet list that it received it. During the time, we can set up Ledger integration with Lotus Lite daemon. So if we go to our Lotus config under wallet section, we can enable Ledger integration, which the Ledger software was written by the Zondex team. And after we have it enabled, we can create a new wallet with SecP ledger address. So it's also a SecP address, but it uses the storage on the ledger. First, I need to enter my PIN code into the ledger. So if I do that, and I did it incorrectly, give me one more second. Now I can create a new ledger address. And it will ask me on my Ledger device to confirm it. It also prints the address in the log, so I can look, oh, is it the same address that Lotus is telling me, to just verify that the software is not lying somewhere along the way. Maybe my computer is hacked or something like that. So I accepted the address, and the address was created. As addresses in Ledger are deterministic, this address, I've used this address previously. So if we do Lotus list, let me make it a bit smaller so everything fits on screen better. You can see that this address has already around 2 fill in it. So that's an awesome feature of using Ledger as your wallet. Even if I lose this Lotus repo by like RMRF Lotus, I still have that address. We can also see that my BLS address already accepted a transaction. So we can send, for example, from that BLS address, to my ledger, and we can send some more dust into it. You cannot send a full amount. Currently, we might enable like automatic estimation for when you're trying to send full amount, but I should be able to send almost all of it to the ledger, and I can transfer from the ledger address. If I try to transfer from the ledger address, the ledger device will ask me to confirm the transaction, and it will show me all the information about the transaction. So now on my ledger device, I see that I'm sending to address ending in INA from address ending in 3KA with nonce 2, with the value, gas limit, everything, and I can approve to sign the transaction. And now I got the transaction CID. So yeah, we can look at my mempool. I have nothing in my mempool, so that transaction supposedly already went through. Yeah, so that's the basics of using Ledger for your wallets. It's especially useful. The Lotus Lite feature is especially useful for Ledger because usually you wouldn't have your Ledger plugged into your like at-home PC that's running always, or a remote server where you have your Lotus running. And this allows you to simply plug in your Ledger into a laptop, or even plug in your Ledger into laptop, start up Lotus Lite, which can connect either to your server, to remote server, your PC, or even some API providers. I think it also works with Glyph nodes online. So, and you can just simply send transactions. Yeah. So to set up a ledger, you'll want to look at the guide on docs of Filecoin.io, because you need to install ledger application. Yeah, we can also now try creating multisig wallets. So multisig wallets allow you to split the custody of a given account across multiple signers, so multiple separate addresses. So for example, it might be you want to split the custody between your key, your and your backup key, right? You don't, if I lose that key and I lose all of the backups, I might have some key in cold storage in maybe on a ledger somewhere or something like that. So it's never lost. Or I might want to split the custody of that token of these tokens among a group of 3 people out of 5. So we can go to Lotus msig, and here we can see all the multisig commands we can use. So we can use multisig create. Sorry. So we can say, let me list my addresses. So I can create a multisig wallet with 2 out of 2 addresses. So let's say I'll use this address and this address. So this one is my ledger address. This one is my local, like in Lotus key. And I can tell it to use required of 1. So any of those 2 addresses will be able to send funds from and to the multisig. So let's create it. And Lotus Lite multisig is not working for some reason. Yeah, so that's a demo for you. So yeah, but the workflow would be you would create the multisig, you would get a multisig address for that multisig, then you would just transfer some funds to it. So let's say I would transfer 1 Filecoin from this to given the multisig address I get. So I would do this exact command, and then I can use all the commands in multisig to either propose a new transaction. So I can propose a transaction from transaction using the multisig address I got to my, let's say I want to pay out of my multisig to this address. with like I want to pay out 0.5 Filecoins out of it, right? So then I would propose, and if the multisig required value is 1, then this will just go through. If the multisig required count was, for example, 2, then I would have to, after doing this command, I will get a transaction ID, which I then can use to approve a transaction from using the different key. So that would use this propose would use my default key, so the one marked as default over here, and then I could approve it using my second key if my multisig was requiring 2 approvals to transfer any value out of it. So yeah, Lotus multisig command group also has many commands for adding signers to the multisig, swapping out signers out of multisig, so on. So if I wanted to, as an example, add a signer on my third key as a signer to the multisig, I would pass in the multisig address and some signer, let's say my T3 key. If I wanted Lotus to automatically increase the required threshold from 1 to 2 after adding that signer, I can tell it to increase the threshold. And I think that's most of the basic operations on multisig. It works transparently with ledger devices. If you are able to send a Filecoin from a ledger using Lotus Lite or Lotus, you are able to also perform multisig operations using your ledger device. Yeah. There is also one additional feature of wallet. You can set up what's called remote wallet in Lotus. So on your server, you can set up a reverse connection to your local wallet, which can be a ledger device. So then using the commands on your server, so on my server here, I would be able to send Filecoin using a remote wallet feature. I'm not sure if there are good docs on it yet, probably not, but we should write some. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much, Kuba. I have a couple questions for you. So number one is, are there any new and exciting features for the wallets in Lotus that might be coming in the future?
So we are looking at introducing in Lotus HD wallets and in Lotus wallet encryption, so password protection, which is a basic feature we just didn't get to ship yet. Yeah, apart from that, probably some better integration allowing in-browser apps to connect to the wallets, connect to the wallet and ask for permission to send a transaction. Yeah.
That's great. And are there any recommendations that you have for, say, miners or other operators who have keys on their associated with Lotus, either using Ledger or some other tooling?
So optimally, your owner key should be a Ledger key. As far as I know, it's like the owner key of a miner is very, very important key. It allows you to completely change the ownership of the miner, or changing the worker keys and changing the control keys. Also, if you're holding any amount of Filecoins, a significant amount of Filecoin, I would also recommend using a ledger device. But either way, always back up your keys if you're using in Lotus key store, which is the key store is located in your Lotus demo /key store. And yeah, make sure to have it backed up. And if you're storing any high value amount of Filecoin, just use Ledger. It's way safer. And if you're using Ledger, for sure, remember to have your recovery phrases somewhere safe where it cannot be destroyed at once with the ledger device. So probably somewhere else.
Great, sounds good. Well, thank you very much. This is a great talk, and we'll move on to our next speaker. All right, John.
Hey.
So John is the founder of Infinite Scroll, formerly Open Work Labs. Infinite Scroll builds tools, apps, and products for the DWeb space, most recently Glyph, which he will talk about in this presentation. Right, if you want to share your screen and start your video, you're ready to go.
Cool. Oh, it says I can't start my video because the host stopped it, but
yeah.
Yeah, cool. And I just switched apartment locations. I'm actually sitting on the floor right now, so if you this is what I got. Yeah. So anyways, let me share my screen. Okay. So yeah, the past like 8-9 months, I've been working on this sort of umbrella brand called Glyph, which includes a few different things. So most importantly, for today, is the wallet. The vault is basically like a limited version of what Kuba was just showing you. It's a UI for a Filecoin multisig. We also have these JavaScript modules that I can link to in the talk for building Filecoin apps. These are JavaScript NPM packages. We have this Filecoin verification service, which is going to be coming out soon. And it basically allows you to authenticate with GitHub to prove your identity and get a verified data allowance, which means essentially that your data is marked as real on the Filecoin network, and hopefully miners should be rewarded for storing real data. So you might get cheaper service, cheaper storage, or better service. And the nodes, the Protofire team is now managing these, but we helped at the beginning just spin up all the sort of Kubernetes stuff. But yeah, let's start with the wallet. So this is basically what you see when you go to wallet.glyph.io. There's different options here. So if you just want to get started and start sending around little bits of Filecoin or just generate an address, for whatever reason, you can use these test accounts. This would be, like generating that 24-word seed phrase, which you can use in other wallets, or here again by importing it. If you're actually planning on using Filecoin to store, or using Glyph to store a good amount of Filecoin in a wallet, we definitely recommend, like Kuba was saying, to use a ledger. Hardware wallets are much safer than anything happening in the browser. So definitely keep that in mind as you use this Glyph wallet. So anyways, we could step inside. So right now, I have my ledger on me. I have the Filecoin app open here. It's kind of hard to see, but the Filecoin app is available on Ledger Live, and there are some blog posts that I can link to after this talk to explain how to actually get it. So here, I'm just gonna go into the wallet, and I'm looking up the transaction history. And here, yeah, this is an account I use clearly a lot for testing. And yeah, this is basically like the gist of the wallet. It doesn't do too much. The important things to note are you can send Filecoin by clicking this button, and I'll go through that in just a moment. You can also, one thing that's important to do when you're using a ledger on any wallet really is to show the address that you see on the screen on the device. So if I click this button, I see on my ledger device the address. Again, that's going to be impossible for you to read, but that matches up with this. And the reason why that's important is because you want to make sure that this, like, what you're seeing on the screen matches what's on the device, and you don't have any Chrome extensions or other sort of things interfering with what you see on the screen, excuse me. So I'm going to go and say accept. And then I can also switch between my ledger wallets. And like Kuba was saying, these are deterministically generated. So every time you come here with the same ledger, you'll see the same addresses. So what I'm going to do is switch to an account that has no balance. So this one, I'm going to copy this address because we'll send it some Filecoin, and go back up to maybe this address and send some file. So I'm going to paste in my other ledger address, maybe give it a 10th of a file or a 100th of a Filecoin. And here, this transaction fee is paid in auto file. This is pretty small, so I'm just going to let that be. The idea here with transaction fees, in case this is something that's unfamiliar in the blockchain space, but this works a lot similarly to other blockchain networks, is that sort of the more you pay, the faster your transaction will get confirmed in the network. That is maybe a bit of an oversimplification, but generally that's the rule to follow. So I like to stick to the recommended amount in the wallet because I know it will confirm in a reasonable amount of time. And so now it's just saying, review this. You'll see the total that I'm going to pay is what I want to send plus that transaction fee. And now that transaction gets sent to my device. I'm not going to show you because it's really small, but you see a bunch of the parameters of that message on my device. So I can click through and just make sure again that it matches, like the value that I'm sending and the recipient address and stuff like that. So now I've just signed the message on my ledger, and now that transaction is confirming. And I can go in there and, you know, I can see if it's on Filefox, but I doubt it will be there quite yet. Yeah, so that transaction is not found. And as we wait, I can switch back to the address that should receive the file. And hopefully we'll see the balance just pop up by however much I sent, which was 100th of a file. So this should take a couple seconds. I guess while I do this, I can show you just some of the modules that we made. Let's see, I think it's github.com. So these are the packages that we use in a number of the Filecoin or in a number of the glyphs that we make. And so the ones that I think are the most helpful, Filecoin number is surprisingly helpful for basically choosing between different types of denominations. So it will just run the conversions for you. The Filecoin wallet provider, this is a if you wanted to make your own wallet, this has some handy methods associated with it that will basically allow you to do things like check the balance of an account, check, you know, how much a transaction costs and stuff like that. The RPC client is a package that allows us to communicate with a Lotus node. And yeah, so I mean, this is a good place to look to if you ever wanted to build your own glyph. All right, let's see if we go back here. There we go. So this has updated. That's a good sign. And if I refresh the transaction history, maybe it hasn't appeared on Filefox yet, but hopefully, or maybe it did, but that's maybe a small bug. Anyways, that is generally how the wallet is working. I have a couple minutes left. I want to show you just the vault, which is what we use to basically interact with a multi-sig. And right now the vault has some limited functionality. So the first limitation is that it only works with single signer multi-sigs. It's actually quite like difficult to show in the UI, like, hey, there's a number of proposed transactions and allow people to cancel them or reject them and stuff of that nature. So the complexity when you have many signers really makes the complexity increases. So right now I see all of my ledger addresses on the screen again, and I need to choose the one that's going to be the signer of whatever multi-sig I want to interact with. So I know that this account has some multi-sigs. I know my multi-sig address, which I've gotten from creating a multi-sig elsewhere. Maybe in the future, we might allow you to create multi-sigs from the Glyph wallet. But now I can step into the multi-sig and see a couple things. One, I see that multi-sig actor address that I just entered on the previous screen. And this is, you could, if you're familiar with like Ethereum development, this is a lot like the smart contract address of your multi-sig smart contract wallet. It's pretty analogous. And this is the ledger address that's the single signer of this multi-sig wallet. And so those two are kind of linked together. Right now, I can see the available balance and the vesting balance. And so the Filecoin multisigs allow you to basically put some funds into the multisig and linearly allow those funds to be available for withdrawal over time. So as more blocks get added to the chain, you're able to take out more Filecoin from your multisig. And so since this multisig has no vesting, or it's been a while, maybe it's already fully vested, here is, now I can withdraw all of the Filecoin from this multisig. And so it looks very similar, right? I can choose a recipient of the withdrawal, and I can take out Filecoin. I think just so I leave some time for questions, I probably won't go through that whole process again. But yeah, I want to see if anyone wants to see something that I didn't show, or just general Filecoin application development questions. I'm happy to field them.
Great, thank you very much. Maybe one question might be, is there multi-sig support with multiple signers yet, or is that coming in the future?
Yeah, I think that's something that we'd like to support in the future. Right now, that in Glyph, that's not supported. So if I try and type in a multi-sig actor that has more than one required signature, it will tell me, hey, sorry, we don't support that yet.
Yeah, makes sense. What other exciting features are you thinking about now, or kind of what's next on ahead for the set of wallets?
Yeah, so that's an open question, and if people have opinions on this, or people strongly want a feature implemented, that would be really helpful. I'd love to hear from you and hear what that is. So we're still kind of temperature checking what people want and need out of this stuff. My personal preference that gets me kind of excited is different ways to interact with these wallets and different key management services. So for example, here we have basically I can log in via Ledger, and I can log in with these test accounts. But I really would like to figure out a safe way for non-technical folks to use these wallets as well, without having to understand what all these different options mean. Maybe like a sign in with email. And a step above that, something that we've been starting to think about is essentially mimicking a multi-sig wallet in Filecoin with people's social profiles, so that I could safely put my funds into a multi-sig, and in order to withdraw them, I need to tweet something, click a link in an email, and authenticate with GitHub. And we can sort of use those social profiles as proxies for signatures, so that non-technical people can safely use Filecoin with a multi-sig and do so in a way that they're more familiar with.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. Maybe and question, I don't know if you covered this. When would people? I see the slider between T addresses and F addresses. When might people want to choose that?
Oh yeah, that's a really good question. So the Filecoin network has sort of transitioned from what seemed like a testnet into mainnet, and sort of when the testnet started, we had everyone using T addresses, and when mainnet launches, we switched everyone to use F addresses. Really, like these are. I would strongly recommend always using F addresses unless you have some Filecoin on a T address that you used before mainnet launched. Using an F address will allow your wallets to be compatible with other wallets in different networks. It's sort of up to spec, where the T addresses are more of like a in Glyph wallet represent more of like a test network kind of wallet. It is a bit of a different yeah, it's a little hard for me to explain in just a minute. But short answer is use F addresses.
Yeah, sounds great. And is there anything else you want to talk about or mention to the community, either future projects ahead or anything about Infinite Scroll used to be open work labs?
Yeah. Well, so a brief note on Infinite Scroll. We used to be Open Work Labs. We added a couple other team members, and we've started a rebrand. And don't be fooled by the name. We're not proponents of Infinite Scroll. Our kind of slogan is "You must wear the skin of the thing you wish to slay." So, with that being said, something that we're coming out with in the next month or two, we're trying to make the easiest, fastest, and simplest way to build peer-to-peer apps where the users of those apps own and control their own data. And that's built on Ceramic and Textile and a lot of the existing tools in the space, but doing so in a way that abstracts a lot of the complexity, both for the users and for the developers. And so hopefully even a junior developer with no knowledge of cryptography or blockchains or the D-Web will really quickly be able to start building apps where their users are in control of their data.
That's awesome. Thank you very much. I think that's it for my questions. Thank you so much for a phenomenal talk, and we'll switch over.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so our next speaker is Juan Lenny. Juan leads Sondex's team. They are behind many of the hardware wallet apps that you use every day. Sondex works with many top projects in areas such as cryptography, remote signers, protocol development, and integration. And Juan is not the only Juan in Filecoin. Juan, we can't hear you yet. I don't know if maybe there's a mic issue.
I hope now it's okay.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, sorry. So I think it's going to be a bit more, not as interesting as the other ones where you have demos, because we have been working mostly on the back end and the background of the things. But I hope I can provide a bit overview of all the libraries we've made and how they can be also integrated by other people in the ecosystem. So, I mean, we have been involved in Filecoin for a while already, almost like a year, and we have been working on different areas. We did part of the like things like OpenCL integration. We also did the firmware for the hardware wallets like Ledger Nano S and X. And we have been also working on WebAssembly and some Rust libraries that are being used by some of the wallets. This project was called Filecoin signing tools, and also on exchange integration. So we are kind of like not exposed to the final users, but we are like kind of running a lot of the code and providing libraries to people in the ecosystem. So if anyone is like interested in building up like on top of Filecoin, I mean, you can also use some of the libraries we made, and that will simplify a lot of your work. So I'm going to go like quite briefly on those, and maybe we can later discuss, or I can answer some questions about that. So, I mean, with respect to Ledger apps, we made the Filecoin Ledger app for Nano S and X. We also made integration libraries for Rust, Go, and JavaScript. So you can use the Filecoin app from those libraries without like having to deal with like USB or all the critical aspects of like how to connect. The Ledger app was extensively tested. We did like also API fuzzing, and just before the release, we went through a couple of like audits. One audit was done by Ledger, the other audit was done by a third party. And as you have seen in the previous presentations, these two projects like Leaf and Lotus have already integrated. So, I mean, it should be fairly easy to integrate into other components, given that you have like also support in different languages. Apart from that, some other projects, they need to have access to signing tools that are not just running on a hardware wallet. And it also requires interaction with nodes, transaction serializations, and things like that. So we also have been working on these Filecoin signing tools that some of the projects you've been watching, they also use that. We provide a JSON RPC service to connect. We also provide like a signing and verification. And all these libraries were also audited. You can use them from a lot of different languages. So we provide like examples and documentation and FFI support. So you can use the same library from C++, Java, Kotlin, Swift, Objective-C, Flutter, and many others. The examples are not extensive, so we didn't expose the whole API, but we provide a way of example on how to do that, and we can probably support like people in GitHub if they have like any kind of like big issues with this integration. Also, these Filecoin signing tools also integrate like Ledger, so you can like sign BLS or SecP or through the Ledger any of these messages and later relate to the chain. In addition, we have been working on exchange integration. So there is a new API that Coinbase is like working on that is called Rosetta. That's a Golang based SDK that allows you to kind of like abstract away different chains, and it simplifies all the process of integrating with an exchange, but also provides like the ability to query the chain and also get information similar to what a block explorer would do. What we did there is like we have a Dockerized deployment for this Rosetta proxy. It allows some simple caching, but we are like going to improve that like pretty soon, hopefully. And also allows for actor type resolution, like full chain indexing. It allows you to get access to metadata like non-sys gas estimation, something like that. And we test that extensively in our testing infrastructure. So we have like full node CI, we have access to low-level traces, so it's not just like the transaction itself, but we understand exactly how the transaction was executed inside the node. So even in the case of multi-sigs, it's very easy for exchanges to understand if a propose was actually producing a change or if it was like one of the many proposes that are necessary to get to the change in the balance. So all this helps to have like a clear account reconciliation. So exchanges or projects that rely on Rosetta can like understand how the history of the full chain works out and understand like all the changes in all the accounts. Similarly to a block explorer, but also with a bit more detail because of the access to traces. And what we are planning to do next, well, it depends. I mean, we are like working with many projects in different areas, and there are some aspects that we have like quite a bit of experience. Like for example, the aspect of remote signers. So we have a project where we are like using remote signers for proof of stake, and we think that it could be useful to use also in Filecoin for all the miners. So we are like kind of finalizing this trust zone based device where we have like kind of an industrial device like data center ready that has like high performance, and we can provision keys from a ledger to this device and offload and later have like some interesting mechanisms, but we don't have to have a ledger that is a consumer device like hanging from a data center. We are also thinking of like solving some of the latency issues that we have been working on. So do a full chain indexing and caching and having some kind of like a nice API on GraphQL with reorg support. So if the chain changes, we will do the full reindexing for only the special parts, and some other concepts like improving a bit more the signing tools and maybe working on some additional hardware wallet support. these are kind of like ideas that we are like discussing, but we would be happy to help in all these areas that are basically in the area of expertise of our team. So I would like very briefly on all the things we've been doing, but I'm happy to go through anything in more detail, or maybe answer questions about that. But in a way, we didn't prepare like a demo because I think that you have seen in a way that our work through the demos of others, like in all the integrations that we help with.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, I can ask you a few questions. So
yeah, of course.
Maybe number one, what are the kinds of applications you're seeing built? So of course, things like Glyph and others, but anything else that you've seen being built with the tooling?
You mean additional applications that can use these tools?
Yeah, that are already using the tools, or that you're excited to see using the tools.
So as far as we know, so there are a few exchanges that are like relying on these. Also, Glyph and Lotus are already integrating with these libraries and tools. I think that there are like a few new projects that are also relying on this because of the impact and like the issues that we have seen in GitHub. Something that I didn't add in the presentation is that we have been working with some other people in Protocol Labs on the payment channel support. So, for example, our signing tools also support payment channels and the whole workflow, not only multisig. So we provide like WebAssembly support for that, and we have been like interacting with some people in Protocol Labs on the browser extension that supports retrieval operations. But I'm happy to. I mean, I think this is kind of like the early stages, and probably these tools will like probably need like a bit more feedback. I think the advantage of these libraries is that they cover like most of the basic workflows, and they have been audited, so they can be used as a kind of like safe choice when dealing with like cryptography or operations like that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm curious if you could show us just like the GitHub repos of the tools, just so that developers out there might get familiar with them.
So Filecoin signing tools is the GitHub repo where you can find like as you can see, it's being used by a lot of people. Here you basically have a Rust native library that has support for like 6P. This is kind of like a bit out of date, so multisig and BLS is already supported. Also, you have this Rust library compiled as WebAssembly. So in WebAssembly, you can use all this cryptography directly in the browser. And then you have like this JSON RPC server where you can use that for interacting with the nodes, or there is also a service that does something similar to what we did for Rosetta in the Exchange integration. And then in the same repository, you have a lot of examples for each of these languages. And how the integration happens. So for example, you can connect from your browser to WebAssembly and have like all this functionality. And the same for all these languages. We provide like very simple examples on how to connect from any implementation written in that language to our library. So for instance, if you want to do something for mobile phones using Objective-C or Swift, there is a way of connecting to our Rust implementation that has support for BLS, SecP, transaction serialization, on all these features that we already discussed. And in addition, of course, you have like a continuous integration, and we have like kind of like a very good coverage and all these other. So apart from that, we have like obviously the Ledger app. Even though this is kind of like something that probably is interesting only for people that might want to look at the code, because the whole development process, once the Ledger app is published, it goes directly to Ledger and they take ownership. So you won't be able to kind of like ship a new application. It has to go through Ledger because of restrictions from the security point of view. But the Ledger app also is available in case someone wants to add additional features. We maintain that actively. And then we have like some repositories, for example, for Rosetta, where we keep like all the things. So for example, for Rosetta Proxy, which is this tool that I was describing, you can also get access to this. We have like kind of like constant releases, and we have also continuous integration running like full nodes. So I mean, if you go to our GitHub, you can find like a lot of the work we have been doing with Filecoin. I mean, so here there are like a lot of components that are available. For instance, I think the recent integration into the Lotus CLI was particularly using probably like Ledger Filecoin Go. That is the complete communication and abstraction from like the device and any Go library. And we have like something similar for Rust, and we have the same thing for JS. So if you're interested in anything that is like relatively low level within the Filecoin ecosystem, in all the aspects that are like signing or cryptography, I think you will find like a lot of things here.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool. There are many people making web apps out there that need to sign transactions. So for those web developers out there, is there a specific module you recommend using that shows maybe like the example code on how to call Filecoin signing tools and things like that?
Yeah, so this is the one that most people will be using, Filecoin signing tools. So if you go to examples, you will have like examples on how to use WebAssembly in the browser or directly in Node. And then here you have like different ways of doing. And for FFI, the same. You have like examples in C++, C, Flutter, and Go. So I mean, this is the point where you probably want to look at the examples. We have like been like doing a bit of like a rebranding on the website. So soon we will have like all the documentation published there, like probably next week. So there you can find also some of the documentation, but otherwise we have like the documentation is active here, like in Markdown. We need to kind of like restructure that. But here you have like all the examples on how to, for example, do key derive or key derive from seed, and how to serialize a transaction and communicate with the node. So all the bits and pieces that anyone that is building on top of Filecoin needs to sign or use a ledger or anything is all here, even if that's in a mobile device. It's all kind of documented, and we have like continuous integration for all these cases. So you can see that that's kind of like working and being tested. So I mean, this to go to master. So here we have like all the tests for like Ledger, services, Rust, and NPM and everything. So if anyone in the ecosystem is really looking to do some integration, I think they will find like a lot of things here.
Awesome. That is really, really great and phenomenally organized repo, by the way. That's going to make it super easy for everybody to use. Maybe a quick question on audits. Of course, all this kind of code is super critical and whatnot. Can you maybe mention like what a audit flow there has been or will be and so on?
So we had like 2 audits, particularly in the Ledger app. One was done by Ledger, the other one was commissioned by Protocol Labs. I'm not sure if I can tell the auditor or not, but it's a really, really good one. So we went through that process, and there were like many important findings, like kind of like a lot of things that we could improve. So we did all that. We also have like some interesting tooling for fuzzing. So fuzzing means that we send a lot of like random data to the tool, to the point that we like check that the coverage of the whole application is like really high, and that we don't have like bugs in very odd corner cases. So we do that not only for Filecoin signing tools, but we also have like the whole infrastructure for the Ledger app. In the case of the Ledger app, there is something also kind of like interesting. We have our own emulation tool, where for every time we make changes, and this was also part of the audit, we run like integration tests where we run simulated app, where we check that everything is working and even the screen has not changed, and we check that all the values are correct. So we have a very, very structured workflow for all these things. And on top of that, obviously, Ledger does their own homework and verifies that. So if you see, for example, the Filecoin app, at the moment is like forked by Ledger, and that's what we need to kind of like follow now. Anytime we need to make a change, we need to kind of like send a pull request to Ledger, and they will review the code again. But I think
awesome.
in general, the audit was like very fruitful, and it took like kind of 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's really cool to see an emulator for Ledger and everything, doing testing with all of that. That's super cool.
Yeah, that is quite useful. We run that in CI for every change, so we're kind of like quite confident that we don't break it or have like issues later on the field.
Totally. And then maybe you mentioned kind of remote signer support as a thing that's going to come in the future. I know that's something that a lot of people might be interested in. Maybe tell us a little bit about that.
So remote signing is a project that we have been working like in a more general case. What we are doing is we are considering. So the problem, I mean, I can tell like we did that for a few other projects already. Each project is slightly different. Basically, the problem we've seen in the field is that many people are kind of relying to the solution that is available, that is like having a ledger in the data center, but ledger devices are actually consumer devices, and they might not have first the computing power to run things like a VLS with low latency, and at the same time it's something that is not designed for that purpose. So we have been trying to find something in the middle. Ledger has a very good feature that is like you have like physical security. So even if you get access to the device, you can extract the keys. But actually, for someone like a miner, the main problem is logical security. It's not so much about getting access to the device, where in a data center probably you have like already physical security, like 2 guys at the door that don't let you get in. So in most cases, the main issue is physical security. So what we've been working is in using a trusted execution environment in an industrial device with much more computing power. We have been experimenting. We didn't want to use SGX because of all the issues that they have been having in the last few years. So we have been working mostly with ARM. We have a kind of nice implementation using Rust in a T, in a small industrial device. And we support like a range of like signature schemes. So one thing that we were like thinking is using Ledger to provision the key to this device. This device stays in the data center, has like kind of like low latency in the case of VLS. It can be also be sourced from the field like very cheaply. So you can have like 3 or 4. So you don't have to buy like really expensive HSMs that if you want to have like a good backup, the price for a new miner, not like top of the line miner, it can be like too high. So the idea is that what we are trying to do is to kind of provide software for these devices. We are not in the hardware business, so people can source the devices and use them. Basically, in a very quick way, it would be like something similar, like an industrial quality Raspberry Pi that you can buy. You can install the software, you have a secure boot, you sign the firmware with your own Ledger device, you provision the keys, and then you have that thing running in the data center in a much more secure way than keeping the keys in a host.
That's awesome. That's really cool. I think a lot of folks are gonna be very excited about those kinds of tools. Lots of different kinds of applications will want that. Juan, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for this talk. Super illuminating. I'm sure a lot of people that are either already using or will use the tooling will find it super useful. And thank you so much for making the tools. These tools are super useful and valuable for a lot of people. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me. I felt a bit like an odd animal between all the wallets, but so I prefer to give you like a kind of like more like broader overview of what we've been doing. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. And now our next speaker is Dan Finlay He's a co-founder of MetaMask, the world's most popular way to connect to Ethereum-based applications. We'll be sharing a bit of how they're planning to expand into Filecoin. Dan's an old friend as well of the whole project and network. So I'm very excited to have him here today.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Juan. Yeah, I'm so excited that you guys shifted. This has been so exciting. At MetaMask, we've been looking forward to Filecoin and you know the many innovations that are coming around. So I'm going to share a little bit about MetaMask, where we're at, and how we're planning to integrate with Filecoin, just like Juan said. So here's my slides. First, I'm going to give a brief kind of overview of what MetaMask is. And then I'm going to get into kind of how it ties together with the Filecoin ecosystem. So there's a lot of ways that the web is broken today. Obviously, there's a lot of surveillance. You know, every website has its own login system. Every website has its own way of asking permissions. It's kind of inconsistent. You're kind of trusting them to respect those. There's every website maybe has its own way of asking you for consent. You know, you get a GDPR prompt, but really it's the website's interface asking you for permission. So they always make it as annoying as possible to express your actual privacy preferences. This is kind of just fundamental to when all the account data is part of the applications that you're interacting with. Oh yeah, it's also very hard to unsubscribe from things, cancel accounts, all that kind of stuff. MetaMask is a different approach to logging into websites in general. We're a browser extension. So yeah, the original version, we put in a browser extension in the wallet. It includes an account manager. It provides an API to every website that the user visits. And so the websites are able to request things like the disclosure of your account, propose transactions, request spending limits to perform their own operations, things like that. We integrate with hardware wallets and let people escalate their security as they'd like, and that's been great for the Ethereum ecosystem. And you know, we've been doing it for 4 years, and the Ethereum ecosystem this year we've seen our user monthly active growth about 4x. So we've got about 1 million monthly active users. These are people who are actually using applications, and so the heart of it is because we have user-owned accounts. We put the keys right in the browser, and every time one of these websites wants something from you, they have to ask you, and they have to ask you through MetaMask, through your wallet. And so they're not providing the interface to get your consent. They're actually having to call an API method that then gives the user an interface for getting that consent that is designed to get informed consent from the user. And so we kind of get to occupy this very interesting space where we're kind of trying to come up with the simplest but most informative way of representing the kind of consent that's getting requested of you. This lets you share information progressively. So this year we rolled out one of our best privacy features yet, where you can actually, you can even create new accounts when you connect to a website. As soon as they request you to connect, you can connect multiple accounts, and you can, and we have a new permission system that came with that. And we're able to very easily iterate and add new permissions within that. So one website might just need permission to view your account. Another might want to know what your favorite tokens are. And actually this permission system is built to be extensible partly to enable things like Filecoin. And I'll get to how that is in a minute. So we've enabled a lot of different kinds of apps. This is a little overwhelming of a slide, but yeah, the kinds of websites that have chosen to interact with blockchains are many. So everything from payments and swaps, and there's voting and gaming and art collecting and all sorts of stuff. And with Filecoin, we can add file storage and retrieval to all of that, and all the kinds of markets and ingenuities that build around that. If only there was an easy way to integrate Filecoin into a solution like this. Last year at DevCon, we announced we were working on something we call the MetaMask Snaps plugin system. And what this is, it's basically, it builds on our permission system, but it critically adds one permission, which is the permission to add a plugin into the background, which itself gets restricted permissions. And so we're able to do things like add a plugin that is responsible for a certain protocol's keys. And this allows us to have external developers who are specialized in a certain field build out protocol support for additional chains like Filecoin. So it's very easy to add these. Our designs, I'm going to show you a little bit of the current beta, but we've got designs where it is incredibly seamlessly integrated into the login flow. So if you don't have support for a given blockchain in your wallet when you connect to a website that would need it, it's simply asked for. We're going to be able to recommend and help surface reputable signers to the user, and then you can kind of carry on. And it doesn't feel like you're necessarily adding a lot of new software. And so hopefully it's as seamless as possible. So by default, these snaps get no authority except for what is listed in the permissions list. So this is a hypothetical list of permissions that a new blockchain would need. They need the ability to run a script to communicate maybe with another snap. They need the ability to show you custom prompts to get permission to show permission to do their own transactions and the permission to communicate with the network. They also need permission to access the keys related to that protocol. So we've been working with Protocol Labs and a great firm called Node Factory, who's been building the snap themselves. We're focused on the platform, and then we're helping them integrate very smoothly and to build a Filecoin snap. And this would be a thing that allows Filecoin to be added to MetaMask at runtime. And actually it uses the Zondax signer under the hood. So if you were watching the previous talk, yeah, we're using those same very rigorously tested signing libraries. So that's really great how these things are able to benefit from each other. So here's a little video I took last night. We'll see how it looks. So we'll see, here's their demo. When you click connect, it says, I want to connect a plugin or install it. There it's asking for a set of permissions. At this point, we would also show you kind of the pedigree of the snap. And there you go. We have now derived a Filecoin key from the user seed phrase. I'm now sending some autofill to a friend of mine. I'm autofilling the gas and sending it. Right now, it's just a plain text confirmation, but the snap is defining this text. And so the user is able to coherently review the transaction. They send it off, and we get a content ID. I took it over to Filefox, the block explorer, and it popped up. So we have this working today in beta. So the current beta is successfully generating the 44 compatible accounts. So it's the same accounts that you would get if you're generating from another one of the current Filecoin wallets, and from the same MetaMask seed phrase. So if you back up your MetaMask seed phrase, you should have backups for every protocol you ever use on MetaMask. And it can initiate and complete Filecoin transactions from a website. It's showing basic confirmations. And then, oh yeah, also it shows the, or I've got it actually right here. You can see the Filecoin in the list. So I'm running it right here. So you can see I've got some Filecoin in my MetaMask there. So yeah, that's all great. But you know, this is kind of early. This is obviously one of the most kind of security critical things we've ever done. So there's a few things that we are getting right before we roll this out to production. We are planning to release, you know, a kind of preview. So if developers want to start building applications, they could. But you know, and actually, it's all online and open source today. But some of the things we're doing before we launch to production is we're going to let those confirmations be a bit richer. We're integrating it into our latest production version. That beta is actually on a slightly outdated version. We're going to handle the mechanism by which snaps receive updates. And then we're also improving the user experience of having accounts that come from multiple networks. Our current interface is a little bit naive to that. And so there's just a little bit of design work we need to do. And actually, it's been a lot of fun kind of building for this, this multi-chain future. So that's the status of it. We've got docs on getting started with MetaMask in general, if you're interested. And if you're interested in playing with the Snaps beta, we also have a wiki full of the latest on our Snaps beta. So that's yeah, that's the slides I have to share. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Dan, that is fantastic. That's awesome. The whole community is super stoked about having MetaMask support. So it's really fantastic to be seeing a preview of what's to come. Yeah, maybe some questions. Yeah, so before you mentioned you're testing a lot of things before you can roll out to production. What do you have any sort of like future timeline, or of course knowing that software is software and things always take a lot longer than one expects. But any idea like when either people might be able to try it out either as full users or maybe just developers in kind of like some kind of developer mode?
Yeah, so for just developers wanting to just play with it today, it's literally available now. But we can package it up and make it a little easier for developers to play with in the short term. As for getting it out to production, I don't know, people who follow MetaMask news know that we just launched one of our biggest features ever. And so as we launched swaps in the app. As we've concluded that ended up taking a bit more energy than we expected. And so it did, I think, detract a little bit. But we're starting to, with the conclusion of that feature, we're basically going all in on this. And so I think that we're going to see a lot of progress happening on the Filecoin Snap branch. And I'm hoping that we have it, I'm hoping that we tuck it behind a feature flag or something in production. If we have our way and we totally do incredible, maybe by the end of the year, but realistically, this will probably be a next year thing.
That's awesome. And by the way, congratulations on the swaps. That's really fantastic. Congrats on the launch. So yeah, when a couple of things you mentioned there. One was the possibility of doing things like having data and referencing data and so on. Could you talk a little bit more about that and kind of what you envision there? Also, totally fine if you want to just keep it a surprise for the community in the future.
Sorry, having data and showing data. Could you expand on that?
Yeah, like you mentioned, the possibility of using a snap to look at data or kind of link reference to user's data and so on. I don't know if you wanted to expand on that.
Yeah. So one of the cool things about since snaps can show their own, they're both providing an API to websites you visit, and they can show custom confirmations. So every snap actually has the ability to implement its own selective disclosure algorithm. Now we haven't explored that as much as I'd like, but actually there's a lot of kind of low-hanging fruit for us with the permission system. So for example, when you go to a lot of exchanges like Uniswap, they don't know what your favorite tokens are, but your wallet does. That's like our job as your wallet is to have a list of your assets. So since we have that data available, there's opportunities for us to help broker that information. There's also opportunities for things like contact sharing, or pretty much any kind of disclosure that might be relevant to an application. I think once you have something like Filecoin, it's possible the wallet has some sense or directory of the files that you have backed up. It could be that a website has a file picker where actually it's not picking from your local system. Maybe it's picking from a cloud system. And so I don't know, just kind of riffing there, but every protocol has its own assets and resources that a user might want to tenuously share and selectively disclose. So that's field is like wide open.
That's awesome. That's super exciting. And yeah, I can just think of a bunch of use cases from users holding onto their data to like NFTs and backing up the NFTs that people have on their wallet and so on. That's really cool. Do you want to maybe speak a little bit more about the Snaps or show some of the repos for the Snaps platform, just so that developers that are excited about it can know what if they want to go and write their own Snap for their own.
Yeah, totally happy to. So right now our Snaps beta, it is showing a little bit of age, but the fundamentals are all the same. So here's our Snaps beta wiki, and you can pull down. It's a fork of MetaMask, and it supports these snaps. And so if you go through here, I recommend the Getting Started guide, of course, and it'll teach you how to take down and build the custom build, and then how to start building your own snaps. And we've got a bunch of sample snaps on our own repo. So I think usually the examples, many of them will just kind of demonstrate one API. So like Hello Snaps just shows you how to call and respond with an API. IPFS was one of our first snaps. It shows you how to persist and withdraw a file. So the wallet can actually host and access to an IPFS node. Custom token demonstrates how to render a token in the user's wallet, etc. And then, of course, what will be of interest to some people, oh yeah, I have highlighted the Zondax dependency within the Node Factory snap. So Node Factory has a fill snap. If you want to try out the Filecoin snap today, what you would do is you would go through the sorry, where did I put that? Right. You would go through the getting started. You'd install the MetaMask snaps beta, and you'd pull down the fill snap and try it out. Yeah, it works. You know, it currently I think just provides a basic send and receive API, but that's the beauty of these is that they're actually quite simple. Like, oh, all right, that's not the whole thing. But yeah, so the entire snap, you know, here's the API interface that they're providing. So they allow you to get address, public keys, export keys, balances, sign messages, and getting gas. So it's fairly simple, but you can imagine how you could expand and add RPC methods for any Filecoin related operation. Like uploading a file, paying for that, you know, that's going to be when it gets really fun.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's really awesome, and that's super exciting. Do you have any other snaps that you're super excited about to talk about, either they're public or? Oh,
there's so many. I mean, when we announced this, like the whole point is that as MetaMask, as any wallet has to basically is put in a position where they're either picking and choosing like some select number of protocols, or they're getting left behind or something. And this snaps represents a third way where we can start inviting the wider ecosystem. So we were getting interest from all sorts of things. So this is going to enable contract accounts for MetaMask. This is going to enable, there's some really cool scaling situations going on in Ethereum right now. There's optimistic rollups, there's ZK snarks, there's Starks coming out of Starkware, where they showed they've got a recursive Stark chains going. So as soon as you've got recursive layer 2 chains, sounds like scaling is going to get really interesting really fast. And this gives us a framework where we don't necessarily have to anticipate every innovation. We've simply provided a framework through which those teams can really kind of run wild and freely explore the limits. So I kind of feel like we've held back a lot of scaling strategies in the past. And I think that this has the opportunity to really accelerate the rate of innovation in scaling and security, contract accounts, stuff like that.
That's awesome. That's super exciting future ahead. Dan, thank you so much for showing us all this. Thank you so much for also working on MetaMask, who so many of us rely on every day. And yeah, thanks for showing us this really cool stuff that's coming soon.
Right on. Thanks so much for having me. Fun.
All right, so that concludes the Dev Wallet segment for today. And this is our last talk in the track 2 for now. Join us in the main track for build, and you can find a way to join either the Zoom or the live streams through liftoff.filecoin.io. Thank you so much, and see you soon.